Hi there, Reject Nation. We're going to talk about the best X-Men movie that has ever existed.
Oh, boy.
Dark Phoenix.
Woo!
Before we go into this, I would like to say thank you once again to all the primarily women over at 40X.
That's right.
For hooking us up with another screening. I specifically sent them an email saying, are you guys doing a 40X screening for Dark Phoenix? Because we'd love to go. What was cool about this one is you really get a good sense of specifically fine-tuned this is, because this movie is not exactly action-packed with visuals throughout, but they still managed to utilize it for very specific moments throughout the film. So it was like a rather subtle approach, but it was a good enhancing approach. So thank you guys once again. Onto this film. Where to begin? I had heard word of mouth about this before we walked into it. Around the time we did the final trailer reaction, it just all started to sink in with me. You know, I'm really starting to lose faith. Actually, I had all these hopes in like the first couple of trailers, and then when the third one, I'm like, you know what? I just don't believe in this anymore for some reason, and I stated it all there. Walking out, I made sure to keep my expectations super duper low. I didn't hate the movie. I know some people hate this film. I don't particularly like it. John, basic thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I'm going to kind of damn this with faint praise, I guess, and say that, you know, I liked it more than I thought I would. I don't think it's great, but it's kind of all right. For at least the mess I was led to believe it was going to be. I thought, this is going to be a total train wreck from what everyone's been saying about it. It's got its moments. It also has its moments where it's not so good.
The first act I didn't mind. The movie's very serious. It's like a super somber, heavy tone. And in the first act, it really worked. Other than an occasional line that was very cheesy, I was really invested in it. I liked the very personal dynamics of focusing in on the X-Men. How the movie was even shot at times. At times there were framing devices that look like out of a comic book. I wouldn't say like the film looks like a comic, but there were shots that I'm like, oh, that feels kind of like I'm looking at a panel.
It has a visual language that throughout the movie I just thought was a bit more interesting than I had expected, especially coming off of Apocalypse. And this is Simon Kinberg's like first directing job, isn't it? So like in that sense, I thought, oh, some of the actual capturing choices are kind of neat.
I liked the overall tone and the mood that they were going for. The thing that hit me about halfway through was this movie lacks a pulse. It's kind of like X Tears, the movie. It's just it's like a soap opera at a certain point. It's just like dramatic. There's a lack of intensity to a lot of the pacing. Some people complain about the pacing of this film in the breathing room. I personally wasn't as bothered by it.
I got more character stuff than I expected.
But then again, the handling of some characters I just really didn't like.
Real hit or miss.
James McAvoy is just such a good actor. I think he does a great job always. I kind of hated Charles in a lot of this movie.
This one is less of a side quest than what he did in Apocalypse. They make this character choice with him that I think is interesting, but they play it in the most blunt way possible to where you're like, I don't know if Xavier would ever really behave this way, given what I know about him. They basically try to do something where his position in the world has gone to his head, and that's interesting, but the way they draw it, he just feels like a different character. It's like earn him being wrong.
You know, with Logan, you have a very technically an unlikable version of Xavier.
Yeah.
Ungrateful, swears, belittles. He killed off all the X-Men. You love him in that movie. And here I'm like,
nuance.
Oh, dude, this guy's just arrogant and annoying now. Sophie Turner it was hit or miss for me in a lot of this movie. There were some scenes where I thought she did a really good job, and then there are other moments where I just didn't buy her. I noticed that a lot of people actually who don't like this movie are still really praising her.
I liked her a lot, actually. And I did not in the last one.
There were some. I think she's better than she was in Apocalypse.
Oh, yeah.
I
think her and Ty Sheridan are both better than in Apocalypse, at least.
Your viewing experience will all depend on what you're comparing this to.
Yeah.
It's like you get more Cyclops action than you ever have. Does it make up for the lack of Cyclops in this franchise? Nah. Definitely not. Is Cyclops still a shining standout character? Not really.
It's cool to see him fight more.
It's just, I appreciate the effort to make him more integral, especially in your revamp of this Phoenix tale. Magneto feels a little like that's the conflicting part. Michael Fassbender is such a damn good actor.
Yeah.
But Magneto kind of feels unessential. I'm like,
Well,
he just doesn't need to be in this movie.
And they bring in an interesting, little world with him and what he's been up to, and there's not really enough time to explore it all that much.
That's the breathing room issue I really have with this movie, is because you have a lot of cool setting up. Okay, we're in the 90s now. Xavier and Magneto and B should be 40 years older.
The continuity.
And I'm not going to be the guy who harps on the timeline continuity, but I'll tell you this. By the time this movie ends, I'm like, now you just totally just like,
you don't care.
It's all destroyed again. And I'm like, this makes no sense now.
I was literally thinking back. I was like, wait a minute. So where does this sit with what we fixed?
We're Days of Future Past. Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute.
But also Days of Future Past messed some stuff up. So
anyway, yeah, you don't really get some time to live in this stuff. Like the X-Men in here, they're set up as they're superheroes and people like mutants now. Magneto, he has his or some sort of colony for like runaway mutants or people looking for homes. And you don't get time to live in these cool new concepts of something that's never been explored in the X-Men world. It's just kind of breezed over and rushed. It's so dramatic. It's so damn heavy, but I don't really care for a lot of it. It was all just thrown in my face. And the issue that I have with a lot of the dialogue in here, really quick, especially with Jessica Chastain's character, I hated Jessica Chastain is one of the absolute best actors working today. I hated her character. There's nothing she could have done to save that performance. There's literally nothing she could have done. The most cliche, heard these lines, I swear, in other movies so many times. Every single line she has. The script all around with its dialogue, because the tone is so self-serious. It feels like a first-time director. It feels like a director who really wants to make a stamp and go for the heavy. Every time there's a cheesy line, it stands out even more than something like Last Stand or Apocalypse because of the tone of the movie. That when the cheese is there, you're like, man, that is awful.
Yeah, well, and the way that the writing of the scenes even oscillates, because some of them do approach the level of nuance that the movie clearly wants to get at. There are some scenes in here, and bolstered by the performances too, that are kind of interesting and powerful, but then you'll get these other scenes that are so underwritten that they are completely silly.
And the arc with Phoenix, you know what really annoyed me about this film? I watched the Screen Junkies X-Men Cram It video on the way over to the screening because we were in traffic for an hour and a half. I watched it, and they reminded me at the end of the movie that they set up Phoenix with Jean Grey does something and you see the Phoenix image unleash and stuff, and it's kind of just not in this movie. And this whole explanation for Phoenix being in here is an outside thing. It's not real. It looked like this was going to be a movie that's dealing with a real internal thing inside of her that she can't control, when really it's this complete external thing that just got into her.
It's just a celestial force that then unlocks her own personal trauma,
kind of. Yeah. It doesn't fully commit to it. There was approaches in concept ideas that I liked of making it more of an intimate shot film, a smaller X-Men movie. Hearing that idea after like the craziness that was Apocalypse and world ending, I actually felt that it hampered the film by not going bigger. It could have gone more extreme. It could have gotten crazier. Instead, by the time you get to the finale, which it seems like it's reported everywhere before this movie came out that the finale's on the train. By the time you get there, and I realized the movie was going to end soon, I was like, not much has really happened in this movie.
I mean, Jean kind of wanders off and is confused, and then, bumps into a whole lot of people with a whole lot of plans for how to get her either under control or out of control, and then, we get on a train and, we fight the bad guy.
I know that Quicksilver's barely in Days of Future Past and he's barely in Apocalypse, but man, do they have better justification to keep him out of the movie than in this movie.
Oh no, he falls down. He falls down. He has to go recover because he fell down.
Quicksilver's gone now for this, the whole movie.
I was sitting here going, is there a clause in his contract that says only one Quicksilver scene per movie?
10 minutes in your movies, all right? Just 10 minutes. He has to do another season of American Horror Story. There are some cheesy lines, some cheesy visual moments. You got to have at least one moment with Magneto in most of these movies where he's screaming trying to control something heavy, but there's a scene here that just looks so goofy. You know what I'm talking about?
The helicopter?
Yeah,
where they're both
oh god, that was so cringy.
The thing
I got so pulled out thinking, how dumb must have these actors felt doing the scene?
I didn't. It was just one of those scenes that pulls you out and go, I wonder what Michael Fassbender was thinking at the time when they're swooping a camera over him and all he has to do is go.
Yeah. There's not a lot of action in this movie. But when there is action, I'm going to give it credit. I thought there was some cool moments of the. There's no sequence in here where I'm like, badass. Like, that whole scene is great. But you do get some cool kills. You do get some cool moments with Cyclops, even Beast on the street, Magneto. They do some inventive, creative things that we haven't seen him involved with action moments before. You even get a little bit of Xavier in the field at times. There are some action moments in here that I personally did enjoy. I thought because Jennifer Lawrence knew this was her final film, I felt like she showed up. I think Jennifer Lawrence is an amazing actress. I've always thought she's been miscast as Mystique. But I thought she showed up for this movie. She seemed like she really gave a damn, to do a good send-off. And on that note, the send-off element, I hate the ending of this movie. The way it wraps up with the characters and the journey and yada, yada, yada. Simultaneously, I feel like there was this unfair element that occurred with shooting this movie, but I didn't know about the Disney Fox deal. And all of a sudden, Simon Kinberg's put in this position to make a culmination movie.
And like a capper.
So I know a lot of people are upset about the way this movie ends. At the same time, I feel kind of bad for him, because if this was just another X-Men movie, we could have just forgotten about this shit and moved on, right?
Yeah.
It could have been one of those X-Men movies. Now there's more of a weight to it, because we essentially know this is the final one of this franchise specifically, other than like New Mutants, but that's whatever. We don't even know it's going to actually come out. In terms of culmination, it's terrible. But in terms of just the ending notes, like, even if it was a standalone movie, I would have hated the ending. Honestly, I would have hated the way this movie ended.
I feel like, this movie is in a lot of unfortunate positions, and one of them is that it hasn't fallen in a place in this particular franchise where it's earned the ability to be a longer, more substantial movie. So there's also that. Like, this is a huge story. It's a very important comic book storyline. It's a very intense storyline. This movie would have needed more time to expand and be a film for what they wanted to go for. Like, I didn't hate all the ending notes, but they do feel like, let's just tie this up.
The music's good.
I like the music a lot.
Is it
actually.
Hans Zimmer?
From what I've heard, I thought the score was. I kept finding myself being like, I love this music.
Yeah, the music's great.
I think this is an all right movie, ultimately, like when it averages out. I mean, like, it's got a lot of flaws, but I was enjoying myself and kind of engrossed, at least, for more of it than I thought.
I guess nothing could ever be worse than Origins Wolverine for me, honestly. That is just the bottom of the bottom, because that's just boring as shit. Even though there are times where it's just kind of dull, it's not overall a boring film.
No, there are shades of classic X-Men movies in here. There are moments where they get there and you're like, I could see how this could have been a great movie. You
just don't need that Jessica Chastain. If you had cut out all the Jessica Chastain stuff and made it really focused on Jean Grey and what's going on internally within her and just the X-Men, it would have been a much better movie. It would have been, instead of like this,
random Skrull characters.
Like, this is a totally different movie. We don't need this.
Totally.
And now it's like completely overlapping and undercutting a lot of Dark Phoenix. It's undercutting so much of it. I put my expectations really low. I like it more than Origins Wolverine. I think I like it more than Apocalypse. Weirdly, I prefer watching The Last Stand, because that's at least super entertaining and cheesy as shit to me. Where this, I'm like, it starts off as, I'm liking this different approach to, it's kind of a just mediocre.
It's an odd duck.
2 out of 5 for me.
Like 2.5, maybe a 3 if I'm feeling real generous.
Did you guys see Dark Phoenix? What's your favorite X-Men movie? It's sad that we're living in a day and age where I don't want things to end, and then when you get to the end, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to let it go now.
We can move on. Go to
the MCU now. The last thing I'll say is, like, I think all the actors are pretty good in this movie.
Yeah, I really liked most of the cast.
Because everyone gets, this is the X-Men drama. You guys can subscribe to The Real Rejects, click that notification bell, and if you are going to watch this, I would say do it on 40X.
Yeah, actually, it really does bolster the experience.
Because it's like a more subtle approach that I thought actually enhanced my viewing.
And all the X-Men get their own effects in the 40X mix, and that's pretty sweet too. So,
bye.